Hey guys, tonight we're heading back in time, way back, to the fog-laced, gas-lit streets of Victorian England. You're walking down cobblestone alleys with your boots clicking softly, the hem of your nightgown swishing just above puddles of who knows what. A chill settles in your bones, the kind of cold that seeps right through layers of wool and reason. You pass the crooked silhouettes of townhouses, their windows flickering with the pale amber glow of gas lamps, casting jittery shadows like silent, sleep-deprived ghosts. It's the middle of the 19th century, and you can't sleep. Again, you're not alone. All around you, respectable ladies, gentlemen, and even chimney sweeps are wide awake at odd hours. But it's not your phone, or your caffeine habit, or that one episode of reality TV stuck in your head. No, your restlessness is framed in mahogany and dressed in lace. You've got Victorian insomnia. Victorians didn't call it that, of course. They might have referred to it as the nerves, melancholy, or overexertion of the faculties. But whatever the name, sleeplessness was as rampant in 1850 as it is now. And the solutions? Hilariously misguided, sometimes dangerous, often deeply cozy. You probably won't survive this if you're expecting any of these cures to make sense. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you wide awake at 2:17 a.m. in Ontario? Or gently dozing off in Tasmania as the sun rises? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start by brushing past a newsboy hawking broadsheets, shouting something indecipherable about Parliament and pudding riots. It's dark, and your eyelids feel heavy, but not with sleep, with something else. Maybe disillusionment. Maybe the weight of knowing that your mattress is basically just horsehair inside a burlap sack. Back in your narrow little room, with wallpaper peeling like old pastry, you settle in. The window rattles. You adjust the brass lamp and try to get cozy, but your brain's still racing. What did you eat? What did you read? Did that one pamphlet really suggest that reading poetry past 9 p.m. could unbalance your humors? Victorian doctors believed insomnia had causes. Obvious, right? But the reasons range from spiritual overstimulation to the consumption of tomatoes. Tomatoes! Historians still argue whether it was the acid or just their fear of anything red and juicy that kept people suspicious. One popular culprit was modernity. They blamed the rise of urban living, gas lighting that kept the world bright well after sundown, and newspapers full of gossip and revolution. You could now sit in your parlor and read about a scandal involving the Duchess of Devonshire at midnight, while your brain stayed lit up like a fireworks display. To make matters worse, the gas lights hiss constantly, emitting not just light, but carbon monoxide. So you're tired, because you might be slowly poisoning yourself. Fun! You lie there and think about all the noises, hoofbeats, clanging bells, someone selling eels 3 doors down. Noise pollution wasn't invented with leaf blowers after all. But what really gets you is the anxiety. Victorians were obsessed with health, but in a weird, performative, overanalyzed kind of way. There were charts about bowel movements, essays about how one's soul could be corrupted by a late-night pastry, and lectures on how dreaming of bats could mean unresolved father issues. One famous physician, Dr. William Gohl, who ironically was also a suspect in the Jack the Ripper case, but that's a whole different insomnia story, advised total lifestyle changes for sleepless hysteria. You, dear listener, were probably told to give up meat, corsets, novels, and gossip. You've never felt more misunderstood. Even the furniture seemed to conspire against sleep. Your mattress crinkles. The springs were optional, the comfort non-existent. Your pillow is filled with barley husks. Your blanket? So scratchy, you wonder if it's actually punishment disguised as textile. But don't despair. Your insomnia is perfectly fashionable. Society ladies were encouraged to faint artistically during the day and then lie awake at night with a copy of Byron or the Book of Common Prayer. Gentlemen were expected to toss contemplatively in bed, presumably while drafting unsolicited essays on philosophy. And then there was the moral judgment. Oh yes, being tired was a moral failing, a sign that you were either lazy, sinful, or perhaps French. God forbid. So here you are, curled up in bed, feeling guilty for not sleeping, anxious because you're guilty, and now guilty because you're anxious. It's a Victorian feedback loop, and there's no Spotify playlist to break the cycle. Still, the city settles. The clatter outside becomes background texture. You try lying on your side. That's not it. On your back? Worse? Maybe if you hang one foot off the bed like they suggested in Household Words magazine, edited by Charles Dickens himself. Yes, Dickens, a man who walked through London all night just to calm his own insomnia. You can almost hear him now, boots echoing on wet flagstones, muttering character names as he walks. You stare at the ceiling and wonder if you'll ever sleep again. But for now you listen to the soft hiss of gaslight, the distant rumble of a horse-drawn cab, and your own tired breath. Victorian nights were long, but eventually something always gives, either sleep or the resolve to keep pretending you don't miss coffee. And anyway, you're just getting started. You drag yourself upright in bed, groggy, not from rest, but from sheer accumulated exhaustion. Your eyes sting, your joints ache. If sleep were a polite guest, it's long overstayed its absence. So you reach for what every self-respecting Victorian insomniac eventually turned to, the local apothecary. And here he comes now, shuffling into your memory with an apron stained by a century's worth of dried herbs and suspicion. Dr. Willis, no relation to any medical school you've ever heard of, smiles with too many teeth and offers you a small, cloudy glass vial. "This'll set you right," he whispers, handing you what he proudly calls a bedtime cordial. You peer into it. It's thick, milky, and smells vaguely like nutmeg, slightly like sadness. You ask what's in it, and he cheerfully lists boiled lettuce water, warm milk, a whisper of opium. Just a homeopathic amount and a generous grating of nutmeg. You sip. You regret. It tastes like what a dusty library might sweat. Still, you sit back and wait for something to happen. The warm milk starts to feel comforting. The nutmeg tickles your nose. The lettuce, well, apparently that was a big deal back then. Victorian herbalists believed lettuce had powerful soporific effects. They'd steep it into teas, boil it into soups, and serve it on plates with little apology. Historians still argue whether it was the lettuce itself or just sheer boredom from the taste that knocked people out. You lie down again, the cordial settling in your stomach like a well-fed cat, and close your eyes. Outside, the city continues its endless grumble. Somewhere, a dog barks once, then presumably regrets it. A carriage rattles by, wheels clicking like metronomes of someone else's routine. Victorians loved a good bedtime remedy. No two alike. If one didn't work, try 5. There was a near-religious faith in warm beverages. Not tea, that was for daylight and duchesses. Bedtime called for broths, sleep potions, and cordials made from poppy, hops, or valerian. You name a plant, they tried it. Dandelions, chamomile, clover, crushed lily petals. Even roasted apple peels soaked in red wine. And then there was beer soup. Oh yes, hot beer thickened with flour and sweetened with molasses, stirred with a stick of cinnamon and served in a tankard. Imagine going to bed with a bloated stomach full of medieval milkshake. But hey, the Victorians were resourceful. If it couldn't put you to sleep, maybe it'd weigh you down long enough that you'd give up trying. You start to feel something shift, your limbs growing heavier, mind softening at the edges. Is it sleep? Or mild intoxication? Or the fact that you haven't blinked in 20 minutes? You remember reading something in The Lady's Domestic Companion about winding down one's humors before bed. According to the book, the body needed to retire as the sun does, gradually, with grace. No sudden transitions, just warm socks, candlelight, and an aggressively dull chapter of Pilgrim's Progress. As you lie there, your eyes begin to wander the room. The candle flickers beside your bed, its flame swaying like a drunken dancer. A basin of water glints in the corner. You notice your nightshirt is slightly damp, probably from the mustard foot bath you took earlier, another of Dr. Willis's very proven ideas. Victorian self-care was a mix of comfort and masochism. For every plush quilt, there was a foot bath so hot you questioned your moral fortitude. And don't forget the dietary interventions. To cure insomnia, you might be advised to avoid cheese, tomatoes, pork, and, strangely specific, all pickled vegetables of German origin. But then they'd tell you to drink boiled celery water with a dash of cream and hope for the best. You try not to think about food, or digestion, or the fact that maybe your great-aunt's bedtime biscuit, one made of flour, goose fat, and ash, yes, real ash, is still sitting undigested somewhere deep in your system. Your stomach gurgles and you sigh. Another popular treatment involved evening airing out. Victorian insomniacs were told to open a window no matter the season. The crisp night air, they believed, would restore your vital essence. And if that didn't work, you could always burn dried heather under your bed to smoke out bad sleep vapors. You can't help but smirk. Who knew that sleep hygiene once involved literal smoke? Still, some ideas weren't completely terrible. They just required less mercury and fewer leeches. One fringe practice involved brushing your hair 100 strokes in complete silence before bed. Not for beauty, no, for balance. The repetitive movement was meant to stir the mind into a docile rhythm. Today we might call that mindfulness. Or just brushing your hair a lot. Back in your room, you shift beneath the covers. The cordial is finally doing something, though it might just be convincing your bladder that it has business to attend to in an hour. You don't care. Your muscles are loose. The candle wax pools. You let your eyes close. For a moment, it almost feels like it's working. A little bit of peace, a little distance from the gaslight glow, and cabbage-scented anxieties of the day. Still, there's something profoundly human about trying so hard to rest. About layering warm milk with wishful thinking and powdered lettuce leaves. You get the sense that people then, like now, were just a little lost at bedtime, wanting peace, craving quiet, hoping that this time, tonight, something simple might finally do the trick. You're awake again. You're not even surprised anymore. It's the kind of alertness that isn't quite conscious. It's just the slow, creeping awareness that your back is starting to hurt and your pillow somehow feels like a bag of marbles. You shift, sigh, then lift the heavy quilt off your legs. And it is heavy, not metaphorically, literally. This, dear sleepless soul, is your Victorian blanket, a marvel of fabric engineering and mild threat to your respiratory system. It's not a soft, weighted throw from a chic internet boutique. No, this is the early prototype, filled with sand, or sometimes even lead shot, and quilted tightly enough to pin a small dog in place. They called it deep pressure therapy before anyone had the term. Historians still argue whether these heavy quilts were a genuine attempt at therapeutic comfort, or just a way to keep anxious Victorians from flailing themselves awake at 2 a.m. You slide your foot out from under it like a prisoner escaping shackles. The relief is immediate. You can breathe again, you can wiggle, but now you're cold. It's a no-win situation, a concept that Victorians were uniquely talented at perfecting. The ideal sleep environment was supposed to be cool, weighty, dark, and morally sound. Yes, morally. Sleep had to be virtuous. If you were too comfortable, it was indulgent. Too bare, you might as well be French. So naturally, society met in the middle. Heavy as sin, cold as charity. And your mattress isn't helping. Stuffed with straw, hay, wool, or possibly suspiciously crunchy seaweed, the Victorian mattress was less a bed and more a burlap sack that had given up. Sometimes you'd hear about someone stuffing theirs with lavender for the aroma. Yours smells vaguely of mothballs and disappointment. Still, you lie back down, eyes adjusting to the shadows, and pull the heavy quilt just above your chin. There was one inventor, no one remembers his name, who tried to make a weighted sleeping cloak. It was supposed to hug your body gently and press the dreams into your mind. Unfortunately, it pressed the breath out of most people instead, and the product was recalled after an incident involving a duchess and a fainting couch. Victorian product testing was, shall we say, reactive. But pressure-based sleep aids weren't entirely wrong-headed. Today we have those lovely 15-pound blankets that simulate a comforting hug, without the tetanus risk. As you lie there wondering if you're being hugged by your bedding or slowly entombed by it, your mind drifts to another peculiar Victorian solution, the gravity mattress. It sounds futuristic. It's not. Imagine a bed frame tilted ever so slightly downward, just enough to make your head feel lower than your feet. The theory: blood flow to the brain would quiet the mind and allow thoughts to drain properly, like a clogged sink or an overly dramatic poet. It didn't work. People mostly woke up dizzy and annoyed. But that didn't stop Dr. R.T. Fenwick from writing a 78-page booklet about it, complete with diagrams and a testimonial from someone named Lady G, who said she dreamt of cloudless fields after using it. That might have been a concussion, but it's hard to say. Back in your room, you shift again. A spring pokes your hip. You reach under the mattress and pull out, ah yes, a sleepstone. This was a thing too. A warmed piece of marble or soapstone, sometimes tucked into the bed to retain heat and repel night terrors. You wonder how that's working out. On the upside, it's still warm. On the downside, it smells like old cheese. Victorian beds in general were intricate works of both craftsmanship and cruel irony. The headboards were ornate, carved walnut often towering over you like a disapproving chaperone. The footboard? Just high enough to bruise your shins if you tried to escape mid-insomnia. And let's not forget the bed curtains. Thick velvet drapes, supposedly to block drafts, trap heat, and provide privacy. What they really did was trap smells and make every night feel like sleeping in a velvet cave full of secrets and cough syrup. But still, you start to drift. Just a little. It's that in-between place now. You can't feel your fingers, not in a scary way, just in the "I might be about to dream of muffins" way. The kind of gentle numbness that says maybe, just maybe, your nervous system is calling a truce. And then, thunk, the ceiling beam creaks. You're wide awake again. Of course. You look over at your bedside table, and next to your barely melted candle is another relic of good intentions, a tin of sleep powder. Just a pinch, they said. Sprinkle it into hot water and sip slowly. The ingredients? Valerian root, ground poppy seed, and possibly sawdust. Still, you consider it. Sleep in this era was a performance art, each night an elaborate routine of measures and materials and mental gymnastics. And so, you do what many Victorians did when they'd exhausted their remedies and their patience. You reach for your bedside journal and start writing your sleep log. It was fashionable in certain circles to keep a night diary, noting time of waking, type of dream, quality of bedding, suspected sins of the day, and whether your cat seemed possessed again. You write, 3:15 a.m. Dreamt I was falling into a bakery. No pastries, cold feet. Quilt is heavier than guilt. You pause. Realize that sounds poetic. Smirk to yourself. Perhaps you'll publish this someday under a mysterious pen name and call it the Somnambulist's Lament. The candle flickers again. You exhale. Maybe sleep is just around the corner. Or maybe it's waiting for you to give up so it can sneak in unannounced. Either way, you shift your aching limbs under the quilt, rest your head on the barley pillow, and surrender, just for a while. You stare at the ceiling. Still. Again. Forever. It's the witching hour now, and by Victorian standards, this is when things start to get spiritually questionable. You're not just sleepless anymore. You're vulnerable. According to the Household Almanac of 1842, the hours between midnight and 4 were not only bad for digestion, but positively scandalous for the soul. If you couldn't sleep, it might be due to spectral disturbances, unreconciled emotional errors, or most terrifyingly, bad cheese consumed after dusk. You did eat that little wedge of Stilton earlier. You regret everything. Victorians, as it turns out, had a complicated relationship with night. By day, the world was structure and etiquette. But after dark, that was when the subconscious opened like a creaky door. Dreams, visions, and midnight anxieties spilled out, and people were into it. You glance at the corner of your room, shadows shift slightly. Was that your coat on the chair, or something less explainable? No matter, you know better. You think you know better. That creaking sound? Just the timbers settling. That whisper? Definitely the wind. That soft, rhythmic thumping from downstairs? Probably not a ghost Victorian child practicing their pianoforte. Probably. Still, you remember that strange passage from the Victorian sleep guide for households and nervous persons? If the soul is restless, the body will twist. If the past is noisy, the night will answer. No pressure, so you shift again. Because of course you do. Tonight, your insomnia feels almost performative. You're doing everything right, or at least everything someone from 1850 would recommend. The problem is, their idea of relaxing often included things like bloodletting, fasting, or whispering Psalm 6 while rubbing almond oil into your neck counterclockwise. One of the more dramatic methods? Sleep fasting. For 3 days, you would eat nothing but watercress and sip tepid water from a pewter spoon. The goal wasn't comfort, it was humility. You'd deprive your body so thoroughly that eventually it would collapse into slumber from sheer fatigue. Historians still argue whether this was a spiritual exercise or just an elaborate excuse to skip dinner parties. You, mercifully, are not fasting. Your stomach gurgles in defiance. It remembers the toasted oatcake you nibbled on earlier, another popular pre-sleep treat. Bland, slightly chalky, and aggressively unmemorable, like edible beige. In fact, Victorian sleep snacks were a whole genre of culinary mediocrity. Think barley broth, boiled rice in milk, or if you were daring, stewed prunes with just a whisper of nutmeg. Always nutmeg. If the Victorians had a sleep mascot, it was that tiny brown seed, grated into nearly every remedy like it held the secret to unconsciousness. You lie still now, the weight of the quilt reminding you of your own body's presence. The room hums with silence. And then you remember, the sound machine. Well, not a machine exactly. More like a device made of spinning wood and fabric flaps, called a whisper wheel. It was meant to produce white noise by spinning slowly beside the bed, its tiny paddles catching the air and creating a soft rustling, like wind in the reeds. The more expensive models were powered by a candle's heat, causing the wheel to spin automatically until the flame guttered out. If it caught fire, which it sometimes did, well, you wouldn't be awake much longer anyway. You didn't invest in a whisper wheel. Instead, you hear the real thing, a breeze pressing against the thin pane of glass in your window. It hisses softly, as if to say, "Still awake, are we?" You sit up and reach for the window latch. It opens with a groan that could win awards. Outside, gaslights line the street like sleepy sentinels. A cat disappears behind a milk cart. The sky has that pre-dawn quality. Blue but not committed. You breathe in. This is what they called taking the air, a cure recommended for both melancholia and sleeplessness. Step 1. Open your window. Step 2. Stare pensively at nothing. Step 3. Try not to feel existential dread about the fact that you're still conscious. Some believe fresh air at night could cool the liver and settle the passions. Others just like that it was quiet. Either way, for a few slow moments, you feel a little better. A little smaller, a little like a character in a sepia novel who might finally turn the page to peace. And then you sneeze. The window slams shut again. Victorian houses weren't known for insulation. Your bedroom is now slightly colder and fully awake again. But it's okay. This is all part of the journey. Somewhere out there, in another sleepless home, another weary soul might be doing the same. Walking laps in their parlor, reading psalms for nervous sleepers, or trying to fall asleep by counting the number of times their floor creaks between midnight and morning. You slide back under the covers. There's a final, fringe theory, one that historians still whisper about with a kind of bemused affection. It was called sleep mirroring. The idea was simple. Sleep near someone who sleeps well, and your body will copy theirs. Like contagion. Except instead of catching a cold, you'd catch 8 solid hours of regenerative bliss. It didn't hold up under scrutiny, but many Victorians swore by it. Mothers slept beside restless children. Maids curled up in servant halls, hoping to sync with the head housekeeper's drill. You're lying perfectly still now. You've tried all the usual things, deep breathing, fluffing the pillow, imagining sheep in starched Victorian waistcoats, and yet your brain is still wide awake, pacing around like a concerned butler. So naturally, it's time to bring out the big guns. Mechanical sleep devices. Yes, really. The Victorian era wasn't just bonnets and fainting couches. It was also a golden age of weird gadgets. When it came to insomnia, inventors got creative. If you had money, nerves, and a healthy disregard for personal safety, there was a contraption for you. Let's begin with the sleep inclinator of 1873, a device that looked suspiciously like a seesaw, but with buckles. The theory was that gentle motion, just the subtlest up and down rock, could lull the restless mind into slumber. Like being a baby in a cradle, except you're 42 and wearing night clothes with 12 buttons. Historians still argue whether the machine actually induced sleep or just made people dizzy enough to pass out. Either way, it found some success among the sleepless upper crust. Queen Victoria's fourth cousin reportedly kept one in his conservatory. He used it nightly, until the motor caught fire and singed his eyebrows. But he did sleep through it, so partial win? You shift on your lumpy mattress and try to imagine what that gentle rocking might feel like. Not bad, actually, until the part where you roll off and land on the floor with the grace of a sack of flour. Next on the parade of questionable tech, the sleep hat. Marketed as a cranial comfort and dream alignment apparatus, this was essentially a leather bonnet stuffed with lavender, steel wool, and, for reasons no one could quite explain, magnetized stones. The maker insisted that the magnets would align the dream field and reduce brain static, which is not how any of that works. Still, the image is charming. You, tucked into bed, wearing a hat that looks like a teapot cozy, designed by a conspiracy theorist. You'd try it if you had one, honestly. At this point, you'd try almost anything short of licking opium off a pewter spoon. And yes, that happened too. Opium was everywhere in the Victorian world. You could buy it over the counter in lovely little bottles with names like Mother Bailey's Night Soothe or Dr. Fenimore's Sleep Elixir for Anxious Minds. These concoctions promised rest, clarity, and dreams unmarred by ghosts or guilt. What they delivered was addiction, constipation, and some truly psychedelic midnight snack cravings. Still, it worked for a while. Even Charles Dickens wrote about his nightly laudanum habit. He called it his velvet abyss. There's something wonderfully dramatic about that. You suspect he might have also tried sleeping with his head in a bureau drawer if someone had told him it would help. You turn on to your side. Your candle has burned down to a nub. The room is darker now, shadows blurring into each other. It's the kind of darkness that feels like it's listening. Not in a scary way, just attentively. You remember reading about a man in 1886 who invented a breath meter. It was essentially a hollow wooden pipe with a feather dangling from the end. The idea, if the feather fluttered too quickly, you were breathing wrong. And bad breathing, he claimed, caused bad dreams. Victorians were obsessed with the idea that their own bodies were sabotaging them. Sleep wasn't just something you did, it was something you had to earn through posture, intention, and accessories. You breathe in slowly, experimentally. The air tastes slightly of old wood, melted wax, and that eternal smell of Victorian walls, damp plaster, ancestral mold, and ambition. You wonder briefly if you're becoming delirious, but no, you're just sleepy. Almost. Let's not forget the most popular mechanical aid of them all, the sleep pendulum. Sold in elegant wooden boxes lined with velvet, this device was somewhere between a metronome and a wind chime. It featured a swinging arm with bells and silk tassels that swayed above your face at a calming, hypnotic rate. Some models had a built-in lullaby cylinder. Think music box with delusions of grandeur. The rhythm was supposed to coax the eyelids closed and gently cradle the mind away from earthly worry. In practice, most people just stared at it in annoyance until it clanged into their forehead. Still, there's a part of you that envies their commitment. If nothing else, Victorians tried. They really, truly did. Whether it was elaborate sleep journals, mechanical contraptions, or ritualized tea ceremonies, they approached insomnia like a puzzle to be solved with effort and lace. You consider building your own sleep pendulum out of a shoelace and a spoon, but that sounds like something that would end in a headline. Instead, you focus on stillness. Your body, despite everything, is starting to give in. Your limbs feel thick. Your thoughts don't come in sentences anymore, just drifting phrases. Velvet abyss, swinging bells, Charles Dickens in a sleep hat. That's when the bed squeaks. Just once, not a threat. More like a gentle, exhausted sigh. The kind a mattress makes when it's tired of pretending to be comfortable. You pat it apologetically. The candle finally gutters out, leaving you in darkness. Real darkness. It should be unsettling, but somehow it's not. It's the kind of black that feels like warm velvet, like the inside of a theater curtain just before the play begins. Maybe sleep isn't the absence of thought. Maybe it's just a different kind of story. And your brain is ready to listen. Now dream with your eyes open. Or maybe you're just drifting, that place right between here and there, where nothing's quite real but everything feels heavier than it should. And in this hazy limbo, you remember one of the most peculiar ideas ever whispered through Victorian drawing rooms and medical lectures. The concept of second sleep. Yes, you read that right. Second sleep, as in two sleeps, one night. Before electric lights reshaped our circadian rhythms, people often slept in two distinct chunks. First sleep from sunset to around midnight, then a quiet, wakeful interlude, followed by second sleep until dawn. It wasn't seen as a disorder. It was expected. You'd go to bed at, say, 9 p.m., wake naturally around 1 a.m., spend an hour or two reading, praying, writing letters, or applying goose grease to your elbows if that was your thing, and then drift off again until morning. Historians still argue whether this pattern was driven by biology or simply the lack of artificial lighting. Without bulbs blazing overhead, people sink to the slow pulse of the moon. And maybe, just maybe, that intermission was the body's way of digesting dreams before heading back for seconds. You think about this as you stare into the darkness, wide-eyed and curious. Maybe you have already completed your first sleep. Maybe this isn't insomnia at all. Maybe it's tradition. Victorians would have filled this time with quiet activity. Journaling was especially popular. Not just scribbled thoughts, but elaborate, introspective entries like, "Tonight I dreamt of walking through glass and awoke thirsty. I suspect unresolved bitterness." Dramatic? Absolutely. But you have to respect the flair. You reach for an imaginary quill and start your own mental journal entry. June 5th. Awoke again. Still vertical. No ghost wife. Mild success. It's comforting, in a way, to imagine you're simply following the steps of a 19th century routine. Wake, reflect, calm, return. No need to panic. No need to Google, "Why am I like this?" Instead, you remember another Victorian pastime for the sleepless. Letter writing to the dead. Stay with me. Known as spiritual correspondence, this practice flourished during the height of spiritualism in the mid-1800s. You'd sit by candlelight and compose quiet messages to lost loved ones, trusting that their spirits might respond. Not with ghostly visitations necessarily, but through dreams or shifts in atmosphere. Entire notebooks were filled with elegant, sorrowful notes like, "Mother, I miss your voice during the thunder." Or, "Tell Father I found his pocket watch and it ticks still." Quirky? Absolutely. But comforting too. You wonder who you might write to if you tried. Not out of fear. There's no seance happening here. Just longing. Maybe a relative who slept easily and didn't overthink things. Maybe someone whose only bedtime concern was whether their slippers were placed symmetrically beside the bed. Another popular second sleep activity? Brewing a warm tonic. There were hundreds of recipes. One of the most widely recommended? Slumber milk, a gently spiced concoction of warm milk. Nutmeg, of course. A single drop of rose water and just the faintest hint of brandy, stirred 3 times clockwise with a silver spoon while humming something that sounded vaguely like a hymn. Not that the humming was required, but it was encouraged. You imagine sipping this imaginary drink now, the warmth spreading through you, coating your ribs like a blanket you can feel from the inside. The milk is soft and creamy in your mind, and the nutmeg dances on the edge of detectability. Just one drop too much, and it goes from soothing to Victorian soap. But you nail it naturally, because this is your dream kitchen, or maybe just your sleepy brain playing barista. You shift under the covers again, less out of restlessness now, and more like a gentle repositioning, your body preparing for that elusive second round of rest. And then you remember an article from 1882 describing nocturnal harmony rooms. These were early versions of sleep clinics, run by well-meaning but very dramatic doctors who believed that sound, color, and scent could realign the sleep-deprived brain. Patients were led into rooms draped in pale blue fabrics. Wind chimes played softly. Lavender oil burned in ornate lamps. A harpist, hidden behind a curtain, plucked arpeggios until the patients either drifted off or got up to complain. Did it work? Well, historians still argue whether those rooms helped or just made people feel like they were trapped in a sad dream ballet. But you have to admit, it's a vibe. You picture it now. You reclining on a velvet chaise, the sound of distant harp strings twinkling like sleepy fireflies, the scent of lavender curling around your temples like silk, a Victorian doctor in pince-nez murmuring, "Yes, yes, your aura is clearing splendidly. If only your bedroom came with a harpist. Instead, you get the hum of your ceiling fan and the soft creak of night settling around you. It's not glamorous, but it's real, honest, and maybe that's better." You lie still, letting this strange in-between time stretch out like taffy. Maybe you'll sleep again soon. Maybe not, but you're no longer fighting it. You're in it. That's something. Because in the end, second sleep was never about perfection. It was about patience, about waiting for your mind to wander far enough from worry that it forgot how to come back. And slowly, so slowly, you feel that drift begin. The air softens, your thoughts loosen, the inside of your head starts to fog over, like a window catching dew. And you wonder, could this be the start of sleep again? Your body barely moves now. You're still, comfortably so, as if even your limbs have grown bored of their own fidgeting. And as you lie there, cradled by the weight of your own stillness, we gently tiptoe into one of the more overlooked but oddly soothing sleep strategies of the Victorian era. The bedtime routine so strict it bordered on performance art. Victorians believed in routine the way modern influencers believe in matcha. The day was a ceremony, but the night was sacred. And for the sleepless, ritual was everything. You start to imagine yourself preparing for bed in 1889, but not just getting ready. No, you're orchestrating. First comes the brushing. Your hair must be thoroughly detangled. 40 strokes precisely, not 39, not 41. The number mattered. Each stroke was thought to stimulate the scalp, increase blood flow, and encourage restful dreams. Also, it made you look mildly haunted in the candlelight, which was a bonus in a century obsessed with melancholy. Then, the bath. Not a full one, you're not made of coal money, but a gentle, lukewarm sponge bath in rosewater. Don't forget to scrub behind the ears. Victorians were strangely fixated on the ears. Some thought unclean lobes could interrupt your nervous current, leading to fragmented dreams, or in one case, spontaneous weeping over soup. Historians still argue whether this obsession with cleanliness was medical or moralistic. But one thing's for sure, if they made a TikTok, it would involve aggressively exfoliating with something called carbolic soap for the nervous type. You picture yourself now in a dimly lit Victorian bedroom, standing in your nightshirt, toweling off your ankles, your cheeks still flushed from rosewater. The windows are cracked to let in the night air. A faint clatter of hooves on cobblestones echoes from far below, like the world is settling itself for the night too. Then it's time for the hands. Every finger receives a dab of camphor oil, rubbed in with great intent. Camphor was believed to calm the nerves and deaden undesirable thoughts, which honestly sounds like something most of us could use in the middle of a Tuesday night mind spiral. Once oiled, hands are clasped gently over the belly, not in prayer, though that was common, but as a grounding posture, like your body reminding itself, hey, I'm still here. Everything's fine. Let's not do another round of life regrets tonight. You take a moment to let your own fingers relax. They don't need camphor, not really, but they could use the permission to unclench. Then comes the bed inspection. Victorian beds were serious business. You'd fluff the horsehair mattress, yes, actual horsehair, with a wooden paddle. Then you'd smooth the linens with the flat of your hand, making sure no creases formed ominous patterns. Some believe wrinkles in sheets foretold restless nights, or worse, prophetic dreams involving goats. The pillows were turned, not just flipped, turned, as in rotated precisely 45 degrees toward the east, if the moon was waxing. Otherwise north. Does it help? Probably not. Does it give the illusion of control over an uncontrollable brain? Absolutely. And isn't that what half of modern sleep hygiene is too? A dance we do to convince ourselves that stillness is earned? Next comes the most delicate step, the candle ritual. The last light in the room wasn't just blown out in haste. No, it was watched. You'd sit at the edge of the bed and observe the final flutter of flame as it dwindled down to nothing. Some Victorians believed the flame absorbed your final thoughts of the day. Others simply liked the poetry of it. You close your eyes now and picture the last flicker of your own imaginary candle. It sways gently like a curtsy, then folds into smoke and disappears. The room is darker, quieter, safe, and finally, the sleep posture. Victorians had opinions about how to lie in bed. The most respected sleep position? Flat on your back, hands folded like a peaceful corpse. It was said to align the spine, promote symmetrical dreaming, and reduce the chances of nocturnal madness. You decide not to lie like a corpse, but it's comforting to know they cared. Of course, some deviated. One physician swore by curling on the right side, knees slightly bent, a small pillow wedged behind the lower back. Cradle the lungs, he wrote, and the spirit shall follow. You try that now, just a little curl, not fetal, not dramatic, just enough to feel contained, tucked, like you're a well-wrapped secret. For the most devoted, the bedtime routine ended not with sleep, but with mantra, not chanting, just a single sentence, whispered 3 times. Popular ones included, tonight I rest, and the world may carry on. The day is folded, the mind is quiet. I am not my thinking, not tonight. You choose one now, softly, in your head, not even your lips moving. Maybe you whisper it once, maybe twice. Maybe it's just the sound of it that matters. And slowly you feel the weight of ritual settle over you like a heavy embroidered blanket. Not oppressive, protective. Because while some of this may sound silly now, lavender toes and ghost-avoiding sheet smoothing, the truth is that people have always needed rhythms, patterns, reminders that the night is not something to fear, but something to be entered, like a cathedral, or a warm bath, or a very, very long story. And your story? The bed holds you now, not tightly, but with the gentle firmness of a well-loved armchair or an old friend who knows better than to make too much noise. You don't need to move. You don't even need to think. But naturally your mind wanders anyway, to something strange, something oddly charming. Victorian sleep furniture. Yes, furniture. You see, Victorians didn't just believe in bedtime routines. They believed in bedtime infrastructure. Specialized beds, chairs, blankets, and even hats. Yes, sleep hats that were engineered or at least marketed to guide the body gently toward dreamland. Let's start with the slumber chair, designed not for sitting up, but for slowly leaning back until you look like a question mark contemplating its life choices. Upholstered in stiff velvet, with side wings that folded out like a bat costume, these chairs weren't comfortable by modern standards, but they were seen as transitional zones, liminal thrones you could occupy in the hour before bed to signal your body. Hey, it's almost time to pretend you're dead for 8 hours. You imagine yourself now easing into one. The cushions groan, the velvet scratches, but your posture is impeccable and your intentions are clear. You're not trying to scroll through 3 hours of potato videos. You're here to wind down, Victorian style. Next up, the sleep bonnet. Not just a fashion statement, these elaborate, sometimes bee-ribbon caps were thought to protect your head from nighttime drafts, which Victorians believed could cause anything from earaches to wandering thoughts. Some were lined with herbs, lavender, rosemary, chamomile, and tied snugly under the chin. You picture yourself donning one now. It smells like a sleepy greenhouse. Your ears feel cocooned. You look slightly ridiculous, but also kind of regal, like a bedtime queen of the minor gentry. And you feel that softness bloom in your chest, the kind that makes your ribs forget to brace themselves. There's also the blanket, but not just any blanket. Enter the weighted bed quilt, Victorian edition. Long before modern companies patented their cozy compressions, people in the 1800s swore by gravity bedding. Heavy, often wool-stuffed quilts that press the body down like polite bricks. One advertisement claimed, "The sleeper will be kept in situ and thus in peace." Slightly ominous, yes, but also deeply comforting. Historians still argue whether these heavy covers were more about warmth, restraint, or simply a way to deter midnight pacing. But you can imagine it. The weight of a thick blanket settling over you like a fog, whispering, "Don't bother getting up. Everything you need is right here." And then, just as your thoughts begin to cloud again, you remember the strangest piece of Victorian sleep gear of all, the nose muff. Yes, a tiny fur-lined pouch to keep your nose warm in winter, because central heating wasn't a thing, and humans, being humans, were just a little tired of waking up with icicle nostrils. These miniature scarves for your face were held in place by delicate straps, and they made people look like polite burglars preparing for a formal heist. You try to picture it. You tucked into bed, head wrapped in a bonnet, face strapped into a little velvet nose hammock. It sounds absurd, but it also sounds safe, like every part of you is being considered, tended to, sheltered from the chaos of the waking world. And maybe that's the real charm of all this sleep gear, not just the function, but the message it sends. You are worthy of rest. Even your nostrils deserve comfort. A soft joke, but also a true one, because Victorians didn't think of sleep as weakness or laziness. Quite the opposite. They believed it revealed your character. A tidy, well-dressed sleeper, refined, civilized, possibly in love. A messy, loud sleeper who tossed and mumbled, clearly cursed, or French. There were even sleep audits in boarding schools, where headmasters would inspect student dormitories at night to ensure they were sleeping in a moral pose. Too much side sleeping, it was said, could rouse impure dreams. So yes, people got in trouble for sleeping wrong. Still, the intention behind all this judgment wasn't entirely cruel. Victorians just really wanted to help you sleep. They believed sleep was where the soul met the divine, where the day's noise got folded into metaphor, where, if you were lucky, you could dream something beautiful and wake up just a little wiser. And perhaps the most beautiful symbol of this belief? The sleeping room bouquet, a small vase placed on the bedside table, filled with dream-safe flowers, not too pungent, not too bright. Lavender again, maybe bluebells, maybe chamomile or angelica. You were meant to look at it last thing before you close your eyes, and again the moment you open them. Not as decoration, as a message. The world is soft, and so are you. You close your eyes for real now, just to feel that sentence float through your chest. And maybe tonight, you will set a flower near your bed, or wrap your pillow in something heavier, or whisper a mantra while wearing the ghost of a sleep bonnet. You don't need the props, not really, but the gesture, that still means something, because every tiny act of comfort is a rebellion against the noise, a lantern lit against the flicker of your own restlessness. And tonight, you have your lantern, and your heavy quilt, and your invisible nose muff, and most of all, your right to drift. So let yourself lean into that drift. Let the odd comfort of a structured past carry you. Let sleep come like it always does, not in a rush, but as a soft negotiation between breath and thought. You're almost there. You breathe in slowly. The silence around you has grown deeper, thicker, like a velvet curtain drawn tight against the light. Everything outside this moment, this space, is distant, almost fictional, but not the bed. The bed is real. So is the sense that you are being gently pulled inward by something kind, something warm. And as you settle more deeply, your mind picks up on a whisper from the past. What if your dreams could be directed? Enter the curious Victorian world of dream control, the art of shaping your nighttime visions like a playwright choosing the third act. You'd think this was the domain of mystics and mad poets. But no, dream management was taken seriously. Think sleep therapists with a penchant for Latin, velvet robes, and chamomile liqueur. One popular belief held that whatever you saw or heard in the final moments before sleep would program your dreamscape. So naturally, Victorians developed bedtime tools for this purpose. Dream cards, for example. You'd flip through a deck of hand-illustrated images, pastoral scenes, lovers in gardens, triumphant explorers, and choose the one you hope to visit in your dreams. Then you'd prop it beside your bed. You'd stare at it for exactly 3 minutes. Close your eyes. Whisper the scene to yourself. I am standing in the orchard. The apples are ripe. The breeze is warm. Did it work? Historians still argue whether these dream prompts actually influenced sleep or simply gave people comfort. Either way, the dream card tradition caught on. Even Queen Victoria reportedly had a restful seaside set, complete with a tiny cutout lighthouse. You imagine holding one now, something soft and hand-painted. Maybe it shows a deer in a misty forest, or a warm window glowing against snow. Whatever you see, it's yours now. Your personal dream seed, gently planted before you drift away. But Victorians didn't stop at images. Oh no, they wanted sound too. Specifically, dream music. This wasn't blaring orchestras or lullabies. It was low, repetitive tones played on zither or harmonium, almost like modern ambient sleep tracks, minus the rainstorm loops and whispered affirmations from Australian guys named Kai. A doctor named Silas Merriweather swore by his sleep symphony compositions. He claimed they could guide a restless sleeper through the 7 dream chambers of the mind, culminating in the womb of restoration, which sounds either mystical or like a very intense spa day. You picture it now, a scratchy wax cylinder turning beside your bed, playing a slow, hypnotic hum. Maybe it's a single note, maybe it's a gentle drone layered under the sound of waves, and you begin to notice you're already hearing something like that now, not from the past, but from your room, the fan, the hush of your own breath, a rhythm building with no conductor. It's enough. Victorians also had their oddities. One particularly ambitious trend was olfactory dream manipulation. In simpler terms, smell your way to better dreams. The theory? Scents could influence your subconscious. A few drops of rose oil might conjure pleasant romance. Lavender promised peace. Sandalwood? Deep, mysterious forests. Some even tried burning citrus peels at bedside, hoping for dreams of sunshine and adventure. You wrinkle your nose slightly at the thought of sleeping in a smoky lemon fog. But part of you is curious. Could your mind really take a cue from your senses and build a world to match? You close your eyes and try it. What do you smell? Maybe your pillow still carries a trace of laundry soap, or the faint mineral scent of water, or the gentle, neutral nothingness of clean air. Whatever it is, it's enough to build a world from. A path opens up. Maybe you're walking through a garden, or a library, or an empty beach. The details don't have to be clear. Your job isn't to build the dream. Your job is to invite it. Victorians would often write down the dreams they wanted to have. Just a sentence, scrawled and folded beneath their pillow like a whispered wish. Tonight I will walk beside the river. Tonight I will find the key. Tonight I will fly. Simple, gentle, yours. You don't need a paper, but if you were to write something now, what would it be? You don't need to answer. Your brain already knows. It's listening, even now. One final oddity before you drift further. In 1871, a French-English sleep enthusiast named Thomas Boddington created the nocturnal oracle, a machine of sorts resembling a cuckoo clock fused with a music box. Before bed, you'd press a lever to set your dream theme: love, luck, travel, invention, or revelation. Then you'd wind a gear, and a soothing tone would chime on the hour throughout the night. His theory? That the sound would stir the dreamer at precise phases of sleep, nudging them toward revelations. Naturally, it didn't sell well, but a few devoted followers claimed to have dreamt entire novels, business plans, or philosophical truths after using the oracle. Historians can't confirm any of these outcomes, but one did note that the machine provided structure to an otherwise ungovernable chaos. And isn't that the heart of it all? We can't control our dreams, but we can approach sleep like a dance instead of a battle. We can light candles, we can pick flowers, we can ask our minds, would you please take me somewhere kind tonight? And sometimes it listens. You let your thoughts soften again. No need for oracles, or zither music, or dream cards, though all of it has brought you here, closer to that sweet yawning edge, closer to something wordless, and that's enough. You lie quietly, breathing even and slow, feeling the weight of your body pressing gently into the mattress. The quiet hum of the world outside seems distant, and your mind begins to drift towards something more tactile, a Victorian cure for insomnia so simple, yet so strange, it might just work tonight. You think of the humble warm milk with nutmeg. Yes, milk, not just any milk, but milk warmed gently and spiced with a dusting of nutmeg, poured into a delicate china cup. It was one of the most common remedies for sleeplessness. The Victorians believed the milk's tryptophan, a sleep-promoting amino acid, worked like a natural lullaby, and the nutmeg added a pinch of comfort and calm. Historians still argue whether the nutmeg's mild hallucinogenic effects, in larger doses, contributed more to the sleepy feeling than the milk itself. Some say it was the placebo effect, others swear by it. Either way, you imagine holding that cup, the warm liquid sliding slowly down your throat, leaving a hint of spice and warmth. But Victorians didn't just drink their cures, they smelled them too. Aromatherapy wasn't called that yet, but they believed strongly in the power of scent to soothe the restless mind. Lavender sachets tucked under pillows were popular, not just for their fragrance, but because lavender was thought to repel nightmares. You picture those tiny silk bags, filled with dried flowers, soft to the touch and fragrant enough to calm the fiercest midnight anxieties. In some households, a pinch of musk or ambergris, oddly exotic animal-derived scents, was added to the bedside bouquet, believed to promote deep, regenerative sleep. It sounds strange now, but back then, these smells symbolized luxury and the hope for rejuvenation. You begin to feel your own breath slowing, matching the rhythm of these soft, sleepy rituals. You picture yourself lying beneath a wool quilt, lavender scent faint in the air, the world turning slowly like the gears of a well-oiled clock. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some Victorian doctors recommended crocodile dung plasters as a remedy for insomnia. Yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. A poultice made from dried crocodile dung applied to the temples or soles of the feet to draw out the restlessness. The science behind this? Well, none really. It was believed to have cooling and calming properties. You probably won't survive trying that one tonight, and thank goodness. You chuckle quietly at the thought, feeling the warmth spread from your chest to your limbs. Sometimes the history of human desperation is as comforting as any tonic. Victorian insomnia cures were more than just physical treatments. They were rituals designed to soothe the spirit as much as the body. You imagine a household where everyone is winding down in unison, the soft clinking of teacups, the rustle of pages being turned in a book, the gentle flicker of gas lamps dimming. And as you sink further into this imagined scene, you think about the most debated question among sleep historians. Did these elaborate routines actually improve sleep quality? Or were they just a well-meaning distraction from the harsh realities of Victorian life? Poverty, overcrowding, and endless noise from coal fires and city streets? Maybe the answer doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is the intention behind them. the desire to find peace in a noisy world, the hope that a warm cup or a fragrant sachet might anchor you to rest. You let your eyes close slowly, feeling the day slip away like fine sand through your fingers. The soft scent of lavender lingers in your nostrils. The imagined warmth of milk and spice settles over you like a gentle promise. Tonight you are not alone. You are part of a long line of sleepers who have sought comfort in the small things. Ritual, scent, warmth, and sometimes the absurd hope that a strange poultice might chase away the shadows. Your breath deepens, and you rest. The quiet thickens as your mind drifts further into the realm of Victorian bedtime quirks. You're halfway through this gentle journey, and your body is asking for rest, even if your brain is still whispering old tales. So let's pause here with something both practical and peculiar: the Victorian art of nightwear. You don't just crawl into bed in any old thing, not in the 19th century. Night clothes were carefully chosen, and some might say engineered, for the perfect balance of warmth and breathability. Cotton and linen were the fabrics of choice, light yet insulating. Wool was reserved for the coldest nights or for those with particularly sensitive constitutions. The classic Victorian nightshirt was long, reaching past the knees, buttoned down the front, sometimes adorned with lace or embroidery. Because why not add a little style to the business of falling asleep? You can almost see the gentle swish of the fabric as someone moves slowly to bed, the quiet rustling like a whispered lullaby. Then there was the nightcap, not just a style statement but a necessity. Drafty rooms and chilly evenings meant that bare heads were a fast track to nightmares, or at least earaches and stiff necks. Nightcaps, often knit or soft cotton, were snug, covering the ears and tied under the chin with ribbons. You imagine the softness pressing gently against your scalp, a small comfort in the dark. Historians still argue whether these nightcaps were truly effective at keeping people warmer, or if they were simply a fashionable nod to the concept of being properly prepared. But the psychological comfort of a nightcap? Undeniable. And what about the socks? Long woolen stockings, sometimes tied with silk garters, were pulled on before bed, the knitted patterns stretching over ankles and calves like a second skin. Some believed that cold feet were the enemy of sleep, that the right socks could draw warmth upward and keep nightmares at bay. You laugh quietly, picturing a room full of Victorian sleepers, each swathed in layers of clothing, caps, and socks. Not the easiest way to stay cool on a summer night, but when you think about it, probably the perfect way to feel safe. Speaking of safety, the bed curtain was another key player in Victorian sleep culture. Beds were often framed with heavy drapes that could be pulled closed, creating a private cocoon against drafts, noises, and even prying eyes. You imagine yourself slipping inside this fabric fortress, the outside world muffled, your senses narrowing to the soft folds of the curtain and the steady beat of your own heart. These curtains were practical, but also symbolic, marking a boundary between waking and sleeping worlds, between the harshness of daylight and the softness of dreams. Some beds even had special compartments built into the frame for storing personal items, letters, a small vial of calming tincture, or a pressed flower from a loved one. A private treasure trove meant to accompany you into sleep, a tangible comfort to hold on to when the night felt long. You might smile now thinking of the contrast to today's bedrooms, often minimalist or tech-filled. But the essence remains, creating a space that feels safe, cozy, and just a little magical. You settle deeper under your imagined quilt, feeling the layers of history around you, not just fabric, but care, ritual, and a deep human desire for rest. It's funny how something as simple as a nightcap or a curtain can hold such weight in the story of sleep. You feel your eyes grow heavier, the Victorian world slips gently away as your own quiet room folds in closer. You're almost there now. Your, your breath is steady now, the slow rhythm of rest pulling you further into a quiet space where Victorian night sounds begin to weave softly into your imagination. Sound was as important to them as scent or warmth when it came to coaxing sleep. Outside, the city was rarely silent. Horse-drawn carriages clattered on cobblestone streets, distant church bells told the hour, and street vendors called their wares in fading voices. For many Victorians, These noises were as familiar and comforting as the crackling fire in the hearth. But what about those nights when the city's chorus was too much? When rest felt impossible? That's where white noise, or as they might have called it, steady hum, came in. You probably won't survive if you ever get caught arguing with a Victorian about white noise, but you'll find yourself smiling at their clever solutions. One popular trick was to place a gently bubbling aquarium or sleep fountain by the bedside. The soft trickle of water was believed to drown out harsher sounds and soothe the mind. You can picture the faint shimmer of water in glass, the light reflecting like moonbeams as you lie still, listening. Others swore by the comforting drone of a mechanical fan, a rarity but an early precursor to modern sleep machines. These fans, powered by hand or steam, created a steady, repetitive hum that many found incredibly calming. Like the Victorian version of your bedroom fan tonight. Some inventors even devised complex sound boxes, wooden contraptions with small bells, tuning forks, or vibrating strings inside, designed to produce gentle rhythmic noises. They were sometimes called sleep aids or calming music machines, though they looked more like tiny enchanted wooden chests. Historians still argue whether these devices actually improve sleep quality or if their effect was mainly psychological, a reassuring ritual rather than a cure. But it's easy to imagine the comfort they provided, a steady companion against the unpredictable night. You lean into this thought, picturing the soundscape of a Victorian bedroom, the soft ticking of a clock, the faint drip of a leaky faucet, the low hum of a distant carriage wheel, and underneath it all, the gentle mechanical drone designed just for sleep. And then there were the night bells. No, not the fire alarms of today, but small bells tied to strings that rested by the bedside. The idea was simple. If you woke in distress, you could ring the bell to summon a servant without shouting. It's a tiny, thoughtful detail that reveals a lot about Victorian sleeping arrangements, especially in larger homes where help was nearby but discreet. You imagine the soft, metallic tinkle echoing through the house, a secret signal in the night. Sleep was rarely a solo act back then. It was communal in many ways. Shared rooms, shared fears, shared remedies. You might feel a gentle warmth spread through your chest now, a feeling of being cared for by invisible hands, or the distant presence of those who lived and dreamed centuries before you. This gentle hum of history, this layered soundscape of the past, becomes your lullaby. Your eyelids flutter, heavier now, almost ready to close. You don't need to catch every detail, just the feeling, the steady, soothing rhythm beneath it all. The quiet comfort of a world designed to help you sleep. And as the sounds of Victorian night settle around you, your own room seems a little softer, a little warmer. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you drift. You are drifting now, caught in the gentle pull of night's embrace. But before you fully surrender to sleep, there's one last, curious Victorian insomnia cure to consider. The peculiar practice of sleep baths. This wasn't your average soak in the tub and relax kind of bath. No, these baths were carefully timed, often cold or lukewarm, and sometimes infused with aromatic herbs like rosemary, lavender, or hops. The Victorians believed that a well-regulated bath could balance the body's humors, the ancient concept of bodily fluids influencing health, and calm restless nerves. Imagine stepping into a large clawfoot tub, water cool against your skin, scented with crushed lavender, and a sprig of rosemary floating nearby. The air is thick with steam, the faint herbal aroma curling around you like a soft blanket. Historians still argue whether the therapeutic value of these baths was more about ritual than science. But the calming effect of warm water is something we still swear by today. It's almost universal, the way water relaxes muscles and quiets the mind. One quirky Victorian twist was the bedside sponge bath. For those too weak or restless to take a full bath, caretakers would gently sponge the sleeper's face, neck, and wrists with cool scented water. This was believed to lower the pulse and ease anxiety. You might picture a hand, soft and careful, gliding over warm skin in the quiet dark. And then there's the more unusual version, the saltwater plunge. Sea bathing became wildly popular in Victorian Britain, not just as a leisure activity, but as a health cure. Some took cold saltwater dips just before bedtime, convinced it could flush out toxins and reset the nervous system. The idea of plunging into icy ocean waves to cure insomnia sounds a bit extreme, but you can almost hear the sound of crashing surf, the sharp sting of salt on skin, the exhilarating rush that follows. You might not survive a saltwater plunge tonight, but imagining it is enough to feel the tingling coolness, the sharp inhale, and the calm that comes after. Of course, not all Victorian sleep treatments were so serene. There was the infamous digital sleep therapy, a method where a caregiver would press or massage specific points on the body to relieve insomnia. Think of it as an early version of acupressure or reflexology, long before those terms were coined. Some found it deeply relaxing, others found it uncomfortable, especially if the pressure was applied too firmly. You picture a careful hand, tracing lines along your wrists and temples, coaxing the night to come gently. As your mind wanders through these bath and touch therapies, you realize sleep, for the Victorians, was never just about closing your eyes. It was a holistic experience, a dance of warmth, touch, scent, sound, and ritual. You feel the steam from your imaginary bath fading into cool night air, the lavender scent softening to a whisper. Your breath is long and easy now. The room around you grows quiet, and even your thoughts start to slow. Sleep is waiting, and you're ready. You are so close now, resting on the edge of the deepest night, where dreams start to gather like gentle shadows at the corner of your mind. To finish, let's turn to the most Victorian of all insomnia cures: the power of quiet companionship and shared silence. Sleep wasn't always a solitary act. Many Victorian families slept in shared rooms, sometimes even sharing beds. This wasn't just for warmth or space saving. It was a form of comfort, a way to fend off the loneliness that can deepen insomnia's grip. You can almost feel the presence of a loved one nearby, the gentle rise and fall of their breath, the reassuring warmth close enough to remind you that you're not alone in the dark. Historians still argue whether sleeping in close quarters improved sleep quality or simply created new anxieties, but the practice itself was widespread and heartfelt. Beyond physical closeness, the Victorians valued the quiet rituals before bed: a whispered prayer, a short chat about the day, or the soft reading of poetry or scripture. These moments created a boundary between the chaos of waking life and the peace of night. You imagine the gentle flicker of candlelight, the soft murmur of voices, the feeling of a hand gently brushing away a stray hair from the brow. These small gestures were their own kind of medicine. Some households even practiced bedtime storytelling, not the fairy tales we know today, but stories meant to teach, soothe, or simply entertain enough to distract from worries. It was less about the plot and more about the ritual, the cadence of a familiar voice, the comfort of shared imagination. You might smile softly now, knowing that while the stories themselves may have changed, the need for connection and calm remains the same. One of the quirkiest Victorian practices was the use of nighttime companions, small, soft dolls or keepsakes kept in bed to provide comfort. These could be anything from a carved wooden figure to a beloved pet's small blanket. The idea was that these objects held a protective or soothing power, helping the sleeper feel safe and grounded. You picture reaching out in the dark to touch such a talisman, feeling its smooth or soft texture, and letting the calm wash over you. Sleep, after all, is as much about feeling secure as it is about physical rest. As you lie here now, sensing the fading weight of wakefulness, remember the many ways humans have sought rest across centuries, through warmth, scent, sound, touch, ritual, and companionship. You are the latest in a long line of sleepers, and like them, you are ready. Your breath deepens, your muscles soften, the night holds you gently, and you drift into dreams. The quiet deepens around you, a soft cloak wrapping your thoughts and body. You feel the steady rhythm of your breath as a gentle tide, pulling you away from the bustle of the day and into a space of calm. Each exhale carries away a little more tension. Each inhale invites peace and rest. The world outside fades softly, replaced by the steady warmth of comfort and the soothing hum of your safe space. Your eyelids grow heavier, sinking like petals folding closed at dusk. Time slows, stretching gently, inviting you to rest without hurry or worry. Let your mind float freely as clouds drift across a quiet sky. There's nothing to do, nowhere to be, just the gentle unfolding of night's embrace. You are held safe and sound, surrounded by the echoes of peaceful nights past and the promise of sweet dreams to come. Sleep welcomes you now, and all is well.